In this example, we are going to look at a couple of new types of layout and understand the difference between fluid and fixed layouts. This is example 18 and the source code is available as a downloadable resource as a part of this lecture. Sometimes you want the layouts of your browser to be fluid. So far, all the layouts that we've been seeing, all the examples that we've done in this course have used the fluid layout. The fluid layout basically means that the size of the page changes as the window resizes. All the elements shift around to flow into the new size of the page when you resize the window. We'll see an example of this to understand what fluid layouts mean. The Lunicorn page that we've set up so far has a fluid layout. Notice as we make the browser thinner, we are resizing the browser. The HTML elements resize themselves or they shift. Basically, they're affected by the size of the window. As we expand the width of the browser, the elements move once again to fill up all the empty space. This is a fluid layout. However, you might want the width of your content area to be fixed. You might say that my content doesn't look very good below this particular width and I don't want it to become smaller than that. This is used really often because this ensures that the page that you're seeing looks exactly like the designer envisioned. When a designer lays out a web page, he usually imagines that a certain area is available and gets the best possible page within that area. If you have a fluid layout, if you resize your window to be smaller than that area, then things start to look a little ugly. In order for your page to look like the designer envisioned, you might want to use a fixed layout. The starting point of our current example, we'll use the same Lunicorn web page that we've built up so far. So this is the HTML that we'll work with. Note that it has the header and the footer. So we are continuing with the same example and then we are going to make it a fixed layout. Follow step by step how we convert this fluid layout of our Lunicorn web page to a fixed layout. Notice this div. The content div, it has the class CSS class content applied to it. This div is the logical component which encompasses all our content. So except the header and the footer, it encompasses all the content on the Lunicorn web page. We'll start with the logical unit which encompasses our entire content. This is the CSS style that's applied to this content. Note the width :800 pixel. This basically says that the width of the content area should be exactly 800 pixels. So set the width on the content area. When you set the width, check that it's wide enough to hold all the stuff that you want it to hold. Check that. How did we arrive at 800 pixels? We basically checked it on the browser, made sure that things looked good with width 800 pixels and then chose that width. After specifying the width of the content area, if you reload this page on the browser, you'll find that it looks like this. Notice that the width of the browser window is much larger than 800 pixels, but our content only occupies 800 pixels. Our content only occupies a part of the browser viewport. Notice all the extra space that we have on the right hand side of the browser window. That's because we've resized the browser to be greater than 800 pixels, but our content only occupies 800 pixels of screen space. There is a lot of extra space left blank beyond the 800 pixels as specified by the width of the content area. Even if you resize the window, it does not affect the width. it stays at 800 pixels. If you make it smaller than 800 pixels, you'll see scroll bars. So your content stays at 800 pixels, which is the best possible view that you've chosen for it. With this single CSS property, you've achieved the fixed width layout. This is the fixed width layout. Notice how this window behaves as you resize it. The width remains fixed at 800 pixels. If you make the browser smaller, scroll bars appear. Notice the scroll bar at the bottom. And once you've gone beyond 800 pixels, that's all that your content area occupies. And if you make it narrower than 800, you get scroll bars. So you've got the fixed width. But generally, fixed width layouts look a lot better when they are centered in the middle of the browser viewport. You normally do not have fixed widths which are off to the side of the browser. You generally like them to be centered in between to give a good look. Again, this is super simple and can be done with one CSS property. Let's see what that is. So, to the content portion of your HTML, in the .content CSS class, you'll add one property, and that is margin::auto. We've seen margin before. Margin specifies how much space to leave between an element and its parent element or outer element. Using auto causes the browser to figure out what the correct margins for the content should be. You're basically telling the browser, you figure out the correct margins for the content, and it ensures that the left and the right margins are equal for this particular div or for this particular element to which this content class is applied. It's because your width is fixed, that means it takes whatever the size of the browser is and then makes sure that your div occupies the center 800 pixels. Margin::auto makes the right and left margins equal. It actually makes the top and bottom margins equal as well, but you haven't specified the fixed height. You've only specified a fixed width, which means the right and left margins will be equal. If you now reload your browser after adding margin::auto, you'll see that we now have our content area centered on screen. Notice that the right and the left margins of the content are equal. The browser automatically calculates it and centers your div accordingly. Even when you resize the browser, this remains. Your content will always be at the center of the screen. If you reload your page and then resize your browser, notice that your content always remains in the center. You can keep resizing your browser, keep increasing its size, and it will add to its left and right margins, but your content will remain fixed at 800 pixels at the center of your browser.